Hello, everyone. This is Zeke Speaks. I'm your host, Zeke Rempel, and today we are going through Braveheart. Bernard? Who's Bernard?
My professor's last name's Bernard, and I want to be like, hey, Professor Nard Dog.
I'm putting that in the show. Welcome to another episode of Zeke Speaks. Like I said, we're talking about Braveheart. In these episodes, we talk about old stories that I want to give appreciation to, that were just amazing, whether to me or just the impact that they had in the industry that they were in. Today, we are going to talk about Braveheart. Now, before we jump into it, I want to talk about Mel Gibson. We are solely going to be talking about Braveheart in the terms of 1996 Braveheart. So Mel Gibson in current days, current events, whatever he's been up to or things you may not agree with him, we're not going to be talking about those. I'm only talking about this movie and when it came out and how the movie is today. So let's jump into it. How I like to do these episodes, I talk about a little bit of facts, and then I jump into my opinions, and then we talk about the story. So let's get into some facts. Mel Gibson obviously starred in it and directed it. So if you know anything about Braveheart, it has Mel Gibson.
Obviously.
A guy named Robert Wallace, not William Wallace, which is what the story centers around. A guy named Robert Wallace wrote the screenplay for it. What was interesting about this that I thought was cool was that he actually got inspired to write the story as he was on a trip to Scotland, and he actually wrote the screenplay right after that trip, and then took the process to go through historical fact. So he wrote this actually as a fiction story based on some of the characters that he learned about, or true people that he learned about. And then he actually, after writing it, went back and made it more historical. I think that's really interesting. Another really interesting thing I thought was kind of cool. The Scottish people were actually not too happy with the portrayal of Robert the Bruce. Now, if you've seen the movie, which we'll jump into the story and some of what happens in the movie later on, the Scottish people did not like this because Robert the Bruce is just as an influential person in their history as William Wallace. He's one of their biggest heroes. What's really interesting is that they did not like it because in the movie, he makes some bad decisions and you ultimately don't really like him. You deceived me. The movie won 5 Oscars and was nominated for a ton of more stuff. What it did win for, Best Director from Mel Gibson, which I thought was interesting because he also starred in it. Now, you don't see that very often nowadays. It also won for Best Picture, which that's like the home run. I mean, the Oscars are coming up. That's the big guy. It's the big award. Those are some of the facts about Braveheart. Now let's jump into some of my opinions, what I think about it. Okay, so this movie, in my opinion, is amazing. I love this movie. It is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. Solely outside of The Lord of the Rings. I love The Lord of the Rings. Those are like the holy grails of movies for me. Outside of The Lord of the Rings, it's a great movie. I love Braveheart. It's on my definitely top 3, I would definitely say. This is actually the first movie I cried in, and I haven't cried in many movies up to this point at all. I love stories, but I just don't cry in them. I actually try to make myself cry sometimes because I really want to be in the story, but I just don't cry usually.
I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
This movie, from costumes, sets, the scenery, which was filmed mostly in Ireland, a few scenes in Scotland, which they got some of the villages in. It's a truly amazing film from beginning to end. All the moving pieces flow so nicely. The fight scenes are truly amazing. They're epic. They're very gruesome. Which I thought was really interesting that I read about this was that Mel Gibson got a lot of the ideas to choreograph these huge fight scenes, these war scenes, from the movies that he was in Mad Max. These movies were made by George Miller, which he made the new Mad Max, which I'm a huge fan of. Those scenes are amazing, those action sequences. So I definitely think it's very interesting that kind of ties together, a little interesting note there. Another thing I absolutely love about this movie is the score. Now, my wife can say this. I listen to the Braveheart score all the time. It's just amazing. James Horner, it just made a masterpiece for this movie. It's incredible. So if you have not listened to the soundtrack of Braveheart, go to Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you listen to it right now. It's amazing. But I think what I love most about Braveheart are the memorable scenes and quotes that I will show you guys. I'll show you my top 3. I think about these characters, these quotes, these one-liners all the time. All right, so my first one. This is the scene with Brian Cox. He is an actor in Succession. If you watched HBO this past year, amazing show. Brian Cox has been around the block a little bit. He's an awesome actor. He's in the scene. He shows up as Wallace's uncle. He plays this weird, creepy guy that just comes out of nowhere. It's hilarious. Check the scene out.
William, I'm your uncle, Argyle.
My next couple one-liners that I absolutely love from this movie is from this Irish character. He's super crazy. He's played by an actor that I don't really know, but his character name is Stephen. He's got some awesome one-liners.
That's my friend, Irishman. And the answer to your question is yes. You fight for me, you get to kill the English.
Excellent! Stephen is my name. I'm the most wanted man on my island. Except I'm not on my island, of course. More's the pity.
Your island? You mean Ireland?
Yeah, it's mine.
The Lord tells me he can get me out of this mess, but he's pretty sure you're
Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is probably one of my favorite scenes of all time. It's the speech made by William Wallace before one of the huge war scenes. It's truly amazing, and I have memorized it because I love it so much.
And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
All right, let's jump into the next segment, which is all about the story, which this channel is all about stories. It's why I made this channel. So let's jump into it. From beginning to end, this story is truly gripping. As a young lad, so to say, I will just watch this movie and I'm just enthralled by it. It just draws me in. It's amazing how fluid it feels from every big scene to the next. I love the love story, strangely. As a young kid, I loved it for some reason. I wasn't a huge love story person. Right from the beginning, we are introduced to William Wallace, who becomes this truly courageous hero. I love movies when they establish a hero. I love heroes and villains. I love the contrast that brings. So we definitely get that in this movie. We get Edward Longshanks, who's plays an amazing villain in this movie, really cruel and full of evil, so to say. For me, what makes the story of this movie stand out so much is the incredible call to action that the main character, which is William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson, is called to. He has this love story where he loses the person that he loves and then has to step up to essentially defend Scotland or help Scotland try to gain independence over England. In the beginning of the movie, he finds this girl, he falls in love. As a kid, I really liked this love story. I don't know why. Maybe that's why it compelled me to watch it more. I don't know. His call to action basically drives the entire movie. At the beginning, he loses the person he loves. He falls in love with this girl. They pay the price from doing a secret wedding, and once you watch the movie, you'll make more sense. All in all, he loses his wife, his newlywed wife, and he steps up to be this war leader because he doesn't want to be, essentially. And it's so interesting. I love history, so this kind of takes you through the times of what Scotland was dealing with England being their overlord and Scotland trying to declare independence. It's very interesting, and I thought it was really cool because I love history. I'm kind of a history buff, full of random facts that I won't use ever in my life. But again, the call to action drives the entire story, and that truly makes the whole film as a piece so compelling. It almost makes you feel like you know William Wallace personally because you know his origin story so well. So when he is betrayed at one point in the story, I felt like I was betrayed. In the ending scenes when Wallace is being tortured, and spoiler alert, he does die. The movie was made in 1996, so get over it. You missed it. In these final scenes, you're seeing William Wallace be tortured, and he grasps for some little air, and he screams out freedom. And it's such an incredible journey you're taking on from this whole movie that this character does not lose anything about him, and he stands so strong in his cause. And again, you're right there with him. You know his origin, and it's so cool to see that from point A to point B, and I think that's why the story is so incredible. Honestly, this movie had a huge influence on me as a kid. I would think about what I wanted to do in my life and what beliefs I had, and it made me enforce them even more because of how strong I saw William Wallace be in this movie. So it had a huge influence on me. All in all, this story is just incredible. I can talk on and on and on, more and more hours about this movie, but I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to conclude it on, I believe why the story is so incredible is because the call to action for this character is just so compelling, and it drives the entire movie to in my opinion, to be a masterpiece. On these appreciation episodes, I like to end with a recommend of what I'm into for the week. This week is very interesting because I am watching the show called The Outsider. Now, if you have HBO Access, which I do, thank goodness, this show is incredible. My wife read the book, so we're watching it together. It's really cool to sit down and watch a show with her. And usually I know everything about shows, and she knows everything about the show, so it's kind of interesting how I have to ask her. It's an interesting layer. However, I'm gonna advertise the show as not what you think it is. It takes the genre of the show, it takes a turn at some point, and I don't want to give any spoilers away because maybe I'll do an episode about it, but it's so unique and cool, and just watch it. If you have access to it, try to get access to it. If you don't, that's all I got for you in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it all. Please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts. I want to hear you guys' opinions about Braveheart, whether you liked it or not, because I loved it. You might hate it, and that's totally cool. I want to hear your thoughts. Stay up on my content. My next episode is going to be on Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. Those games are amazing. Huge part of my childhood. I'm going to be going through the story and what makes those games so good, in my opinion. Yeah, that's my episode. I hope to see you soon.